the thyroid gland. Now, like the other time we talked, I say that the thyroid gland, it is that butterfly shaped gland that is ventral to your neck, and it is so important. It is important in your body. Okay, and how is it important? We are going to see the hormones that it secretes. Those hormones must be secreted in required quantities, not hype and not and. They must be secreted in required quantities. Now, this thyroid gland, it is made up of two lobes, and it is located on the ventral side of the trachea. Now, ventral means towards the abdomen. Okay, so you can touch your neck. Try to touch your neck. So in the neck you have there a trachea. Okay, now it is towards the abdomen, but in the neck region. Okay, that's where it is. Now this it produces three hormones, and the first one is triiodothyroxine hormone, and from this tri means three, iodo means iodine, and then thyroxine. So this is just made up of three iodine atoms. Okay, and then this thyroxine hormone, it is tetraiodothyroxine hormone. If you want to be more fancy, you can call it tetraiodothyroxine hormone. And finally, calcitonin hormone. Now these two hormones, they do the same. They have the same impacts. However, the difference is, since this one is triiodo and this one is tetraiodo, meaning this one has 4 iodine atoms and this one has 3 iodine atoms, then when you have enough iodine in your body, then you produce this triiodo. But when iodine is insufficient, so in other words, if you try to economize, then instead of using 4 iodine atoms, you use 3 and you form triiodothyroxine. This is thyrionine. No, this is a mistake. There is X here. This is just a typing error. So it is triiodothyroxine hormone. Then with this calcitonin, for it is responsible in regulation of calcium ions, as we are going to see, together with the parathormone, with parathyroid hormone is secreted by the parathyroid gland. We saw the parathyroid gland is just behind the thyroid gland. They are almost attached together, but the parathyroid gland, it is just behind the thyroid gland. So for it secretes the parathormone or the parathyroid hormone, and the thyroid gland, for it secretes the calcitonin hormone. And those two hormones, they work in conjunction to regulate the levels of calcium ions in your body, as we are going to see. So, now these are the thyroxine hormones. Now the thyroxine hormones, they are responsible in growth and development. They regulate growth and development of cells. How? Because we say that during growth and development, there is a high rate of cell division. Okay? And cell division is an energy consuming process. Now during that process, you need a lot of energy. So what happens is you produce enough. Okay? You need to produce enough of energy. And how do you produce enough energy? By respiration. So one of the effects of these cells is that they do increase the rate of respiration, so that you produce enough energy that is going to be used, that is channeled into cell division to bring about the growth and development. So now you should be thinking, so if you affect the rate of metabolism, how about those people, those feeders who produce a lot of cells, sorry, a lot of thyroxine hormone? And then how about those feeders who produce who have under secretion of thyroxine hormone? What's up with they? How do they respond? Okay, and we are going to talk about that. So they do facilitate the oxidation of glucose by the cells. Okay, and so in other words, if you are in cold, if you subject that person to a cold environment, then there must be an increased rate of respiration to break down the sugars. Okay, now instead of forming energy, and heat energy is also energy, you produce enough heat that will be used, okay, to increase the body temperature of the organism. So in other words, this thyroxine hormone, the triiodo and tetraiodo, they are all the same, but the difference is, I told you, they play a big role, an important role in regulation of the body temperature. Okay? So, in other words, they function to increase the rate of metabolism. Thus, thyroxine hormone work in conjunction with adrenaline and insulin hormone. You should know that yes, we are studying these hormones. We shall study this one, we study the other one, study this. These hormones don't work in isolation. Okay? For instance, for you to increase the rate of metabolism, there must be glucose to be respired. So what does that mean? What does that imply? It implies that you need insulin hormone to increase the levels of glucose in blood. Okay? You need adrenaline, okay, which prepares, this is a stress hormone we are going to see. It increases the rate of respiration. So by the time you produce thyroxine, then it means there will be a stressing agent. Either you are in cold or you want to fly away from a stressing agent. Then you need to produce adrenaline also, so that you increase. They all bring about, they bring their effect, okay, and the effect multiplies to bring a faster response. Is that okay? Yeah, so don't worry, if you have a question, you can always drop it in the chat box. So the regulation pathway is like this. You have the hypothalamus, which is going to detect a stressing agent. Okay, maybe you can say cold. Okay, the temperature, the body temperatures are way below the normal body temperature. So because this hypothalamus has a hypothalamic set point or thermostat, you can say that the blood flowing to the hypothalamus is going to be way below. The temperature is going to be down. And so it will be able to detect that. Okay, so as a result, the hypothalamus is going to release a thyroid releasing hormone that will impact the pituitary gland. Okay? Now, maybe this is the hormone and the pituitary gland is this. So that releasing hormone, it will impact the anterior pituitary gland. Now, the anterior pituitary gland in turn is going to release the thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay? That will circulate in blood until when it reaches the thyroid gland, the butterfly shaped glands. So when this stimulating hormone reaches, we said it is a tropic hormone. Why? It induces other glands to produce hormones. So this thyroid stimulating hormone, it will stimulate the thyroid gland to produce more of thyroxine hormone. Now, depending on the concentration of iodine, it will determine which hormone is going to be formed. If you have excess, then you form tetraiodothyroxine hormone. If you have limited iodine, then you form triiodothyroxine hormone. Now, if the levels of these hormones increase, then you increase the rate of respiration, you increase the levels of glucose, okay, in blood. So you increase the rate of respiration to produce enough heat that is going to raise your body temperature to normal levels. And so you are able to respond to that. So if the levels of these hormones, the triiodo and tetraiodothyroxine hormones, increase, then they have an inhibitory effect. Now this is what we call negative feedback. So they have an inhibitory effect on the anterior pituitary gland and also an inhibitory effect on the hypothalamus. That when the levels increase, then they will inhibit these two from releasing their secretions. Okay? And so when the level normalizes, then you remove these hormones from the body. Because now the level is okay. You no longer need to secrete more of these hormones. Now, for the people who do release, for hyper, can we mute? Now, you might have issues with with thyroid gland. You might have issues with the thyroid gland. Maybe you lack enough iodine. Okay? So this pituitary gland, it will instruct the thyroid gland to release these hormones, to release thyroxine hormone, but because you have no iodine, okay, then you won't produce these hormones. So the levels of these hormones will always remain way below. And so if the levels remain below, the hypothalamus won't know. And the pituitary won't know that the levels of iodine are low. So for them, they will keep on secreting their stimulating hormones. Then the pituitary gland will keep on releasing the TSH. But you don't have iodine. Okay? So the thyroid gland will end up increasing, swelling in size. Okay? And if the condition becomes adverse, then you suffer from myxedema. Okay? Which is termed as goiter. So that's when you see somebody's neck swelling. Why is it swelling? Because of hypothyroidism and the secretion of thyroxine hormone. But it's not because the hormone, it is because the hormone is low, so the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland will keep on releasing their hormones to keep on instructing this to produce, but they will have no iodine. So instead, it will keep on swelling. So that is thyroidism and the thyroid gland. That's how they are important in our bodies. So hypothyroidism, like how I said, in young ones, it brings about sluggishness. You see a young kid, sluggish, the kid is inactive. All the time the kid is dozing. Like, you wonder, I don't know if it has ever happened to you. You are talking to somebody, but you see somebody dozing. I mean, like, damn it. Okay? So, one of the conditions might be this. There is under secretion of thyroxine hormone, which increases the activity of an organism. Because if you increase the rate of metabolism, then the organism is active. There is enough energy. But now, hypo, no energy. So the organism becomes sluggish. Physical and mental retardation. Yes, the kid won't grow if the kid is young. The kid might end up becoming retarded both physically and mentally. But in adults, if there is hypothyroidism, then there might be mental and physical sluggish. Somebody is sluggish, like somebody is inactive. Okay? Then reduced metabolism, which causes sluggishness. And then reduced heartbeat rates, yes, because all these processes require energy. Lowered body temperature and obesity. Why obesity? Because the glucose is not respired, the glucose is not metabolized, so the glucose is converted into fats. And then the fats, they will bring They will be deposited in the skin, in the abdomen, and you see somebody keep on growing fat. Okay. And finally, if such a condition is called myxedema. If it increases, if it persists, then we call it myxedema, which usually results into swelling of the goiter of the neck, the condition we call goiter. Now, good enough these days, this condition is no longer manifested. Why? Because we solved this by fortifying our salt. So the salt, the common salt you take, it is sodium chloride. So we add iodine. We fortify the salt by adding iodine. Why do we? To solve these problems. That's why these days you can hardly see anybody with goiter. But in our days, don't ask which days, but in our days, oh, it was really prominent. Okay? But has been solved. So hypothyroidism is caused by insufficient supply of the thyroid stimulating hormone and can be cured by taking thyroxine hormone orally. So because of insufficient supply of this stimulating hormone, or sometimes due to inadequate amount of iodine, then you don't take or you don't produce thyroxine hormone. And so if you can't produce thyroxine hormone, then the goiter, the thyroid gland swells. Okay? Yeah. So in case you have a question, you can always drop it. Feel free. Then with hyperthyroidism, now these are just prefixes. Hyper means too much, hypo means way below the normal levels. So with hyperthyroidism, here you are producing more than what is required. And it is also not good. Why? There is going to be a very high metabolic rate that the little glucose you have, you use it. Okay? It is not good. Then increase the health, so increase the heartbeat and the ventilation rate. If the heartbeat, if it increases, it is not good. It may have effect on the cardiac muscles. Okay? You overstrain the cardiac muscles. And so it will result into the heart complicated issues. Okay? Heart failures and so on and so on and so on. So it is not good. Ventilation rate, the breathing rate becomes high. Raised in body temperature due to high metabolic rate. Okay? So you produce enough heat, too much heat than what the body needs. Nervousness. All the time somebody is active. These are the kids who are hyperactive. In psychology, there is a condition called, it is hyperactivity, something disorder, stress disorder, I think. A kid is, it is hyperactivity, hyperactive attention disorder, attention deficit disorder. Oh my God, that is psychology, not biology. So somebody is too active. You are teaching somebody, he's doing this, he's saying this, jazzing, throwing papers, throwing pens. Too active. Okay? So it could be due to hyperthyroidism. Because of high metabolic rates, you have energy, and I think you don't have what to do with your energy, so you resort to doing unnecessary things. So that is hyperactivity. Wastage of muscles. So instead of you use the energy, and the energy deposits get done, and then you resort to fat metabolism. And sometimes the proteins, you use your muscles, and so you see somebody keep on growing thin. Why? Because of very high metabolism, which is not good at all. Extreme cases, if it becomes too much, okay, it results into a heart failure. Okay? And the main cause of overactivity is a blood protein that stimulates thyroid gland. Which blood protein? It is the FSH, sorry, the TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone, which stimulates the thyroid gland to produce the triiodothyroxine hormone and T4, the thyroxine hormone. And so you have more than what is required. Okay? Yes. Then with calcitonin, now this one, in case you have a question, you can always drop it in the chat box. Okay? There is nothing to worry about. Now with calcitonin, as I said the other time, it is concerned with calcium metabolism. Okay? Regulation of calcium ions. Okay? The calcium ions should not increase way beyond the normal levels, and it should not decrease way below the normal levels, because we say actually when I was discussing the impulse transmission across the synapse, I talked about the inward diffusion of calcium ions. Did you see? But yes, they are important, but they should not increase way beyond the normal levels, and they shouldn't go way below the normal levels. And so this hormone, the calcitonin hormone, and the parathormone or the parathyroid hormone, they are the ones that are responsible in regulation of calcium ions. And this calcitonin, it increases the levels, whereas this parathormone, it decreases the levels, as we are going to see. Now, the calcitonin controls the levels of calcium ions. Okay, it is produced to respond to the high levels of calcium ions concentration. Okay, then we have our pathway here. So in case actually it lowers, it is produced when the calcium levels are high. That was so when the calcium levels are high, then the thyroid gland releases our calcitonin. And what happens? We are going to see. So let me get some different pen here so that we can okay dissect this one together. Now this is our thyroid gland. Now if the stimulus is the raise in calcium levels in blood. Now if the calcium levels in blood increase way below the normal levels, then the thyroid gland is going to respond to that by releasing our calcitonin. Okay? Now this calcitonin, if it increases in blood, then it will stimulate, it will convert, it will ensure that the calcium ions is controlled back, is brought back to normal levels. How? By increasing the calcium deposition in bones. Okay? The calcium, these bones are made up of calcium phosphate and other inorganic ions. So when the levels of calcium increase in blood, then this hormone stimulates more calcium ions to be deposited, to be absorbed in bones. Okay? And so the mass of the bone is going to increase. Secondly, it will stimulate more calcium ions to be absorbed in the kidneys. Okay? And so the levels of calcium ions in blood, they will reduce. How are they absorbed? They combine with, is it oxalate? Yeah, oxalate ions to form calcium oxalate, okay, which are deposited within the kidney. So you can read about the kidney stones. In other words, they are absorbed by the kidneys, okay, and so you reduce the levels of calcium ions, okay, from blood, and so the levels are restored back to normal. Okay, but now how about if the levels fall way below the normal levels? Then the parathyroid gland, these yellow dots, these ones, They are the parathyroid glands. They will respond by producing this hormone, the parathormone, or you can call it the parathyroid hormone. Okay? Now this parathyroid hormone, it antagonizes the effects of calcitonin. So as a result, then the opposite is going to occur. So if this one stimulates the deposition, then the other one, it is going to stimulate the uptake. Where is it? Increase calcium. Now the deposit, it is here, it is here. The release of calcium ions from the bones. Okay? So the bone, let me say the bone releases calcium ions into the bloodstream. And so you increase the levels of calcium ions. Okay? It reduces the calcium uptake. Okay? It reduces the so this one is increasing, this one is reducing. Sorry for that. Sorry for that. So this one, it stimulates the calcium uptake. Okay? By the kidneys. And finally, it activates the vitamin D, which will be transported to the kidneys, okay, to increase on the uptake of calcium ions from the gut. And so you increase the levels of calcium ions. Now, the reason why you should take enough, you should take food with more calcium ions is simple. Is that if the levels of calcium ions decrease way below the normal levels, then it is not good. Why? Because we have seen that one of the effect is to release calcium ions from bones. So your bones will keep on releasing calcium ions, calcium ions, calcium ions, and so they'll end up becoming weak. And so if the bones become weak, then you won't like it. You suffer from rickets, weak bones, having weak